Hello and welcome to Man's Model Moments Midweek Model Meet. You just caught me celebrating, not really celebrating, but passing the evening as most traditional people do when their girlfriend is away with a curry and a beer. So cheers, everyone. I was just trying to finish it before going live. A little bit too high there, and a little bit skew. There we go. That's better. Properly sorted now. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining me tonight. So tonight I'm going to be continuing on with the diorama. That's how we left it last time. It is now nice and solid, so really hard actually. This dried out to be really good, so I'm quite pleased with how that went. It's got a nice dark brown color as well, and not much cracking. I mean, there's a little bit of cracking because it did apply it on quite thickly, but that's more than acceptable because it's not going to be the final finish. Actually, I might keep some of the cracking just for some dry earth effect. So I'm not displeased with the way it came out. Just dispel the bees. Oh. Come on. There we go. That's better. Just have proper backlighting, because if there's any shadow, it interprets that as not being green screen, so it starts to put it as just a normal thing. So those of you who are channel members, or in the Discord, will know that I have actually taken this week off. Off in terms of I'm not at the shop day to day this week. Maria is away, so I've taken the opportunity to have a holiday myself, but just basically to catch up on some YouTube stuff. I've not managed to get as much editing and work on videos as I wanted to. So I've made 3 models in the last 3 days. So I've made the Apollo 11, the Saturn V rocket, the Artemis SLS I made today. That was a really nice build. Both of those actually recommended builds. The Saturn V is obviously an old tooling. So excuse me. Don't be sniffing all the way through the show, do we? So yeah, the Saturn V is obviously an old tooling, but it is they haven't touched it since the update. So back in I think it was in the 80s, they updated the command module, because the command module was too small. That section was too thin. So they did actually increase the size of that. And that's a separate frame. So because it also changes the width of the body, the sort of cone, I guess, that contains the lunar lander module. But obviously it was narrower, so they've changed that. So it means you get some extra parts, which is quite nice. You get an extra command module. Bar the fact that it does have some gaps underneath. I mean, you can ignore them. I'm going to fill them just because I feel like I should. But if you didn't want to, you're not going to see them. When it's standing. It's an impressive model. I mean, it's an impressively sized model. I'm quite looking forward, actually, because the painting obviously is relatively simple. You spray it white, you mask it, and you spray black panels. that's kind of it. I mean, you can modulate and do other things, but at the bare minimum, that's kind of it. Airfix actually, funnily, don't provide you with any white paint. They are getting you to rely on the white of the plastic, which I think is a mistake. But having said that, everyone's going to rattle can it anyway. Or at least that would be my recommendation, because it's a big area. It's white, it's white and silver, basically. White, silver bits inside, black on the exterior, the panels. So that's quite nice. The SLS, It's a little bit different because the center is like a red-orange primer, I guess, for the what I guess is a liquid oxygen tank, a fuel tank. And again, that is an impressively sized model. It goes together really nicely. Some very clever engineering in that kit. I'm going to put out a comparative unboxing, and I'm going to do the two builds for you guys. And then I did the Tamiya tribute build. So again, if you're a channel member or a Patreon supporter and are a member of the Discord group, we have a group build going there. It's a Tamiya tribute build. Obviously, you don't actually need to be a member of the channel to do a Tamiya tribute build. There's plenty going around. And I threw together the Chieftain, the Mark V Chieftain. And again, I was planning just to do it out of the box, but there are a couple of little things which I can't in all decency leave. It's a really good kit, you know, goes together really well. The main mantlet is missing the canvas cover, so you can actually see through between the gun barrel and, you know, into the tank. So I kind of need to do that. And then the way the skirts attach is, you know, not very accurate. So a few little bits of plasticard, we'll sort that out. Also been doing some paint mixing research. Been looking in Japanese colors, and I kind of wish I hadn't, because Japanese World War II aviation is an absolute nightmare. You thought the RLM was contentious. Oh my God, the Japanese stuff, which is really surprising, right? Because the Japanese, very much like the Germans, quite engineering focused, very meticulous, very precise. I expected there to be lots of records. No, there aren't. It's a real mess. So a lot of what's out there is conjecture. You know, so just if you guys didn't know, Zeros weren't white. Zeros were never white. That is a myth. It was born out post-war, and it's been one of those things that's just carried on. Kit manufacturers have perpetuated it. It's just gone up. They weren't anything like that. So, you know, there's a few things like that. Also, the internal surfaces were basically finished in clear lacquer, which is why you get the metallic blue-green, because the lacquer was tinted with blue or green pigments, or a combination of those, and you get the metallic shining through. So metallic paints that some people recommend don't really give you that effect. They look a bit too much like, you know, somebody's had some car spray paint left over and done the interior. And again, much like the Americans did with zinc chromate, generally the crew areas weren't finished in that. They were then primed in an actual paint. So it's been interesting just to get the, you know, to try and I mean, I really like the learning aspect of the research, and I've learned so much in the last like 4 days, 5 days. It's been quite amazing. I also got back. I've really left the laser cutter, and I really need to do a couple of videos for Creality, because they've been very good, and it's a fabulous machine. And I'm sure Creality are going to give me a discount code if they haven't already, but obviously that won't happen until the videos go up. But if you have the budget and you want a laser cutter, I must say the Falcon 2 Pro is pretty bloody good. So, Pablo, what are you doing? Come on. He's looking for my curry bowl. Hang on, here we go. Look, there's one more mouthful here. I can't let you have that. That probably wouldn't sit well with your stomach. Excuse me a second. There we go. That'll keep him out of trouble for a bit, where he removes the last molecules from that chicken jalfrezi. So I got all my stuff for mixing here. I got it from the shop earlier, and one of the things I thought I really need to organize. I need an ICM paint rack. And I was like, hang on a minute, I've got this laser cutter. I'll just make one. So I made this beast. So knocked that up today. This is kind of the prototype version. So I've made a few refinements to this now to make it a bit more robust, get the dimensions right, and just to correct all those bits that you don't notice when you're designing, but when you come to put it together, you're just like, okay, that needs to be that size, not that. So that contains all 80 of the ICM paints and it's 10 by 8, so you can logically predict where your paints are going to be. So I'll have this on sale in the shop shortly, probably next week, because I think that'll be a useful thing for people to have. Just keeps them all nearby, keeps them in order, and if you're mixing paints, it makes things a lot easier. So anyway, enough of my initial monologue. Let's have a look and see who's in tonight. We've got Paul Dye, we've got Adrian Hook, we have that was me saying hello. We've got Phil, we've got Stuart, we have Mark Grad, we have Idwell Williams. Some of you appear in a dark green on a black background for me, which is why I hesitate sometimes, because the contrast of it is dreadful. We've got Julian, we've got Craig, we've got World War II scale models Dave, and we've got Graham Green. Excuse me. We have Andrew Gittins, we've got Drew, we have, just scrolling down, Simon's Modeling Shed. Let's see, just people saying hello, which is always nice. And if I miss anybody, do accept my apologies. I'm trying to sort of go through, say hello to people, and not delay things too much. BP, the person, not British Petroleum, I take it. We've got another Phil, and we've got Mark Stott, we've got Mario Saliba, we've got Stuart. Stuart gives a question: how is your garage model room coming along that you started? It kind of got put on hiatus, to be honest, Stuart. We ordered, I think I've told this story before, we ordered some cinema seating for the front room because it's just me and Maria. So we thought we wanted a 3-seater, like lazy boy style, electrically operated, so you can put your feet up, got adjustable headrest and stuff. It's got a center thing which folds down with some lights, with a little tray that you can put snacks and stuff in. Just why not? We ordered this last August and it arrived like 2 months ago. It took 9 months for them to get it to us. It was pretty appalling. And they sent the wrong center console. They sent a US one, not a UK one. And their solution was, we'll give you £50 back and a power adapter. To which I said, no, you will send me the correct one. So we're still waiting for that. But that meant that the part of the sofa that was there is now in the model shed. And unfortunately, my ex is dragging her heels with the whole financial settlement, selling the house piece. And so I'm kind of a bit short of funds at the moment. So ideally, I wanted to get that sorted kind of during the summer. But unfortunately, I started organizing it and then it really got stymied. So unfortunate, but I have this room, the conservatory. Obviously, I've got the model shop as well. So I've got enough room to be going on with. I just need to be a bit more organized. That's one of the things I've been doing this week as well, is organizing this space a lot more, so that I can swing a cat if I needed to. Not if I would. Excuse me. Travis is in. Good day to you, Travis. Who else have we got? Just some others filtering in. AFC Nugget, good to see you. We've got Mr. Lepstra. I still can't remember how to pronounce your name. Ayotaki, ICM clear orange and blue, correct? Yeah. So that will be the first interior color that you'll see. So it's actually, I'm not giving you a defined recipe for that. Basically, if you mix it in equal proportions, you get quite a greenish Ayotaki. Whereas if you mix it 2-to-1 blue to orange, you get the sort of more turquoisey blue-green that was often there. And of course, you can add more orange or more blue, depending on what your personal preference is. The thing with Japanese aircraft is you need to check references. Ideally, you need the actual, don't rely on manufacturers. For God's sake, don't rely on manufacturers, because they all pretty much either relying on historical stuff or stuff. A lot of it's just wrong, plain wrong. So it's always best to go back and look at your references. There's a couple of really good websites that I'll quote in my video. One of them, a chap I've actually been communicating with, has a lot of really good information, but it's a blog, so it's not very well organized. Well, it's not that it's not well organized, it's just difficult to find stuff because it's obviously in historical, as in, when the blogs were written format. And you can search, but unless you know what you're searching for, it's a bit difficult. And then there's a couple of other ones. I mean, I found one. Okay, I'll go back a little bit. I'll give you some of this is a spoiler for the video, of course. There's a guy called David Thorpe who researched Japanese aircraft colors in the 1960s. And he did some great work. He went out and basically, because there were still a lot of samples of Japanese aircraft around, he went and tried to catalog all of the samples into groups. So to try and find out what the colors were. So he's got a list of Army and a list of Navy colors from artifacts. The problem is that they don't really directly relate to what the Japanese were doing. These are all just examinations of this brown is probably the same as this brown and that brown, even though they're all slightly different, but they're probably the same. So it just gets really, really confusing. The way the Japanese made aircraft makes it even worse as well, because it's highly distributed, more so probably than any other nation. So of course, there's all that David Thorpe information from the 60s. So a lot of companies went with that stuff, whereas, not necessarily true. And you've got to bear in mind that at Pearl Harbor, so these are first-hand accounts, they said that the Japanese aircraft were very brightly colored. They were like orange, like aircraft there, which is, you ask 100 people of the version of an event and you get 100 different answers. And there were some American training planes around at the time, which people probably confused the Japanese aircraft for. So it's just really confusing because, of course, Japan suffered like Germany did through the war with production shortages. Japan is low in mineral resources to start with, still is till this day. So you can imagine the pressures that put on. And then you've got the highly distributed manufacturing. Then you have field camouflage as well, because a lot of early war aircraft, for instance, were supplied painted silver. And then obviously they were camouflaged in the field when they needed to be, because the Americans were coming and, okay, but now we need to hide these things. So use whatever they had. And that might have been aircraft paint. It might have been army paint. Who knows? They were, of course, in high saltwater environments with a lot of sun. So you've got UV bleaching. You've got the effects of the environment and saltwater. A lot of the paints did something called chalking, so that they looked whiter as like the pigments separate out in the binder. The binders yellowed, some of them darkened with age, and then you've got 80 years of age as well. So trying to be quote unquote accurate with Japanese aircraft is a bit like, you know, sticking a finger in the in the wind and trying to determine the exact degree that the wind is coming from. You know, it's tough. So I will try to navigate somewhere, you know, to get you some colors which are in the right ballpark, but they're probably going to be the least accurate, whatever that means, of any of the mixes that I've done so far. So. Well, not really. Zeros were actually a so the and this is again another myth. They weren't actually light grey. They were a color called well, the translation is ash grey leaning towards candy color or amber. So it's like a warm grey. It's almost like a hemp color if you actually look at them. And the artifacts, and it's quite a brown, you know. And if you're used to seeing a white or bluish white grey zero, and then you see the period accurate hemp color, it's just like, ooh, really? And then you've got things like differential contrast as well. You did get some zeros which were used in training schools, which were painted orange. Which is really kind of a yellow-orange. Well, depending as well. Yellow-orange has about 4 different interpretations as well. And then they were overpainted green, but the undersides were left orange. So, yes, it really is almost like, anything. It's not anything goes, but it was quite wild in terms of what it was. There was the army used a light grey color called Hario Kushoku, which means something like light ash grey, and that was an overall color that was used. A lot of the early pre-war and early war stuff was overall colors, and then I think it was in 42 they came out with camouflage stuff. They actually did a whole research thing on camouflage on zeros, and at no point is that light ash grey mentioned at all. And they do use the standard, which is the J3. What is it? I can't remember what the Japanese for it, but it's ash grey, J3 ash grey, which is a surprisingly brownish. It's a warm grey. But anyway, that's me rambling on about Japanese colours. It's really, really interesting. Yeah, you see, I wouldn't advise using any single colour for Yotaki. I would recommend painting things a nice bright silver, not like a dull aluminium, but bright silver, and then going over it with transparent paint. That gets a much better look than a single like metallicized paint, which doesn't reflect the look of Yotaki really very well at all. Anyway, I have completely lost where I was and what I was doing. So Keith, we've got Keith in. We've got Noss Island, ACF Nugget, I think I mentioned, but if not, welcome. We've got Howard. Howard's in. Pete McDubbs, Rally Chiefs Model Shed. A fair few more people popping in. David Markey. But yeah, I don't know whether we'd be chasing it as much as just barking at it and going apoplectic. I have a story on that as well for later. Otherwise, I'll never get to the end of this. Yeah. So, with Japanese aircraft, the safest thing to do, it really depends a lot on the aircraft. So the aircraft type. So different manufacturers often seem to have had slightly different approaches to things, which is really odd in the Japanese. For me, having worked for the Japanese, it's really odd to see that. There was a brownish color. Well, there were several. It doesn't help either that the Japanese, although they did have standard reference numbers, some of them were given to stuff and then they just weren't used. And then they tend to refer to stuff as a name, so like Aotaki, the translation of Aotaki is actually new bamboo. Sometimes mistranslated to blue bamboo, because if you put Ao and Take separately, or Aotaki, you'll get a different translation. One is green bamboo, like the color of fresh green bamboo. The other is blue bamboo. So a lot of Japanese colors are like that. Ao as well is it's a general kind of term for blue green. So there's no distinction between them for blue and green. In Ao, it refers to both. So there's a lot of ambiguity. I mean, they've got a brown which is just called tea color. It's the color of tea. Color. The other ones are like soil. And I know we had like RAF Dark Earth, and but they had, there were standards which said, here's the camouflage pattern. This is Dark Earth. This is dark green. This is how you make those colors. Boom, done. Right. I know sky is another bone of contention, but imagine all the discussion about RAF Sky, and imagine that being applied to every single color. I mean, there was a standard Imperial Japanese Navy cockpit color. It was a grey green. It was actually very similar to RAF cockpit green. But Mitsubishi and Nakajima seem to make it differently, so they come out as different greens. Now, did they put different pigments in it, or was it that they broke down differently because of different binders and stuff? These questions are all impossible to answer, really. But again, this is where you get the things like you'll see paint manufacturers say Nakajima green or Mitsubishi green, which isn't very helpful because the Japanese had several greens, and again, they don't really help you because, I mean, the Japanese army, for instance, you've got Ao Midori Iro, you have Ki Midori Iro. Unless you know Japanese, it's a nightmare. And even the Japanese translate it differently sometimes. So, yeah, depending on, of course, it changed during the war as well. There's a 1942 standard, and as they went through, they tried to consolidate because the Army and Navy did different things. That's one thing. Much like the US, actually, there's quite a lot of similarities between those, rather than, if you look at Germany, which was very ordered, even if, there's not really too much argument about like the early war colors. I mean, yes, when you get to RLM 81, 82, 83, those kinds of things, that it starts to get a bit flaky. But honestly, the Maya of Japanese aviation colors is, I know I'm just going to get a bunch of people when I put the video out. It's just like, yeah, that wasn't it. It's just like, look, do your research as always, But anyway. Anyway, we've going through that. More people coming in. We've got Stuart. Julian says, on the plus side, when you paint a Japanese aircraft, nobody can say categorically that you're wrong. Yeah, it's well, depending on what you do, obviously, but it's a lot harder to say definitively, no, that's wrong, because it's just like, well, how do you know? You could have been painted in that and then faded in the sun, and so. And yeah, absolutely, yeah, the Japanese forces and depending on whether it was Navy or Army, were very different. But at the end of the day, as you know me, if you're having fun, it doesn't matter, right? What the hell is that? Yeah, I mean, do them pink if you want, but for those of us trying to get in the realms of historical accuracy, to make it look like something that actually flew at the time, that's kind of thing that's where I'm trying to chart the course to, and I think where most of you guys are probably in as well, rather than being exacting. It's just like, because then you start, as soon as you start to be, especially with Japanese stuff, if you try to be definitive, you can say, oh yes, actually there was the shortage of pigments at this time, so an aircraft made after that would have not had this color or that color, but unless you've got proof of an individual one, who really knows? We've got NDR on Simon, we've got Craig Dukes in, we've got Casey. Casey said it was the colours. We've got Paul Dye. Well, and this is it, right? The question would be, what kind of tea? Yeah, they also, it's also difficult because there are often several shades. Like, basically, they categorize everything. So there is a document. Let's see, what is it called? Let's see if I can murder some Japanese. Kaigun Koku Kiyo Toryu Shikubetsu Hyojun Kariki 117. That's not how it sounds in Japanese, obviously. Basatsu, which basically means Imperial Japanese Navy Headquarters Paint Identification Standard for Naval Aircraft, supplement to Provisional Regulation 117. So that was a document that was produced on, these are the colors. But like much of the other stuff in World War II in different nations, how closely it was followed by individual companies, by individual, and with the pressures of war and all that. And then they also made a couple of supplements to that. I think it's 8609. And then later in the war, they tried to consolidate because they were running short of stuff that they didn't have anyway. So they tried to get the Army and Navy to use like similar colors. So it's just like, we're going to have this color, which is similar to Navy color, whatever, and Army color, whatever. So now it's just one. But again, how widely were those adopted? America bombed the absolute bejesus out of Japan. So, these were only issued in like 1944, 1945, when, the state of things was pretty bad. So who really knows? If AO is Japanese, can we blame them for the Teletubbies? I really don't think so. I think we have no one to blame for the Teletubbies but us. Craig Dukes. Alex, are you stereotyping Germans? Well, yes. So stereotypes, in any stereotype, there is a grain, a kernel of truth, right? And a stereotype is given because different cultures have certain trends that, as an overall culture, you can say, oh, well, Germans are generally this. Does that apply to individuals? Not really. But yeah, it is very true that, there are certain industries which were very prevalent and cultures of certain industries that are very present in Germany and Japan. There's no surprise that a lot of, if not most, Japanese companies have their European headquarters in Germany, because there's a very similar approach and mindset. So, but so we all have stereotypes. All nations have stereotypes, right? Like, the stereotype of American is loud and brash and, flaunting money and stuff and ignorant of the outside world. Now, you can go to America and take a sample of 100 people and you will find people like that within that group. Does it apply to everybody? No, absolutely not. do all of those things apply to, you might find that one of those characteristics applies to a lot, another one applies to a different group. It's just we collectively put them together because that's how we view a nation. We're very poor at judging, individual nations by people. We judge people by people, but you do have that in the back of your mind. So I think stereotypes are useful as long as they're not prohibitive, and they're also amusing, for use between friends and stuff, then we all do that kind of thing. John Alec is in. Good evening. And also World War II Skull Models Dave. Thank you very much, sir. Gentleman and scholar as always. He's donated 5 Man's Model Moments memberships. If you do get a free membership, please do hop along to the Discord. There is a members only post on YouTube where you can find the Discord link. I'll make sure that's refreshed after this to make sure you can get in. Casey says, I always felt Japanese colours were more treated as an art than a technical specification. That's possibly very true. Steve's Gaming, welcome. Question, Alex, if you owned your own model making company and wanted to bring out a kit that nobody has ever done, what would it be and what scale? Ooh, now that's an interesting one. Do you know what? I think what I would do is there's a couple of sides to that, because one is I would do cutting edge stuff, right? I would try to be the first to get like the B-21 Raider. I'd want to get a kit of that out. I'd like to get all the Japanese. I'm still got Japanese in my brain. It won't go. All the Chinese, all the new stealth fighters. I'd like to get the, all that super modern stuff. Combat drones, UCAVs. I'd like to get, some of the, just all of those kind of, really front and present here. Now, the Type 100 tank, from China. I would like to do that. That's one side of it. On the other side, the thing is, we're so well served now. I would like to do sort of on the, I guess, so the cutting edge stuff is one. The other stuff is, I guess, sci-fi fantasy stuff. The Liberator, an injection molded model kit of the Liberator, which is about that big, sort of 1/48 scale aircraft size. So manageable, good enough to get some detail in, put it to a big audience. I'd like to do those kinds of things, the UFO. Some of those kind of, that licensing would kill that idea, obviously, but if licensing wasn't an issue, I would do like film and TV and film, TV, sci-fi, fantasy, and then ultra modern stuff, because I think the rest of the modeling sphere is pretty well served. I don't think there are many aircraft and vehicles. You can get kits of the Mary. That's the NATO code word for a pretty ugly Japanese bomber bomber stroke reconnaissance aircraft in World War II. Even the Japanese don't really have any much information on it, so you can get some pretty obscure stuff these days. Luke, welcome. No, they had so even the Navy weren't consistent, and the Army weren't consistent. So just to give you an idea, for the Japanese Navy, So for interiors, I'm mixing Aotaki, obviously, Emron Grey Green, which is the official interior color, Mitsubishi Interior Grey Green, Nakajima Interior Grey Green, and then I may or may not Pablo. No, there was also like some zero components later in the war that were found with like a hand painted buff color. So I may or may not include that depending on what other colors come up. So that's just for the Navy, and then the Air Force used completely different colors. So they used what was called ash indigo color, which is like almost like a Schwarzgrau, but a bit more bluish. And then Orioko Nanago Shoku and Kimidori Ido, which is also an exterior color. Those last two were also exterior colors as well, from about 1943, I think. And there's others as well. Evidence of other colors being used, because I think as Casey mentions here, what was available. Yeah. Well, there was blue and you see again, Aotaki wasn't standard. There were at least a couple of forms of Aotaki, and Aotaki actually was the base lacquer is actually derived from a plant. They believed the Japanese believed it was better than zinc chromate in its protective abilities. The problem with Aotaki as well is that because it's a clear lacquer, it also appears different whether you spray it on, you paint it on, how many layers you put on. And obviously it wasn't really exposed to light much because it was for interiors. And then obviously in cockpits and stuff that was painted probably over the Aotaki. So yeah, it's a mess, man. A 1:1 scale ME262. People make them. That's what flew at Riyadh last year. The reproduction 262, which was a fabulous thing to watch, by the way. Yeah, Paul, absolutely. Liberator would be awesome, I think. Because yeah. Oh, and there we go. Yeah, no model of the spaceship from Andromeda. I mean, there's loads of stuff. Oh God, what's the horror film with Jurassic Park man in it? Event Horizon. The Event Horizon. That's a cool. I mean, it's quite gothic. That's quite a cool ship, and I think there's a model available for that. There's tons of stuff. Yeah, the Sulaco. That's another cool one. I mean, there wasn't. I think it was AMT. It's AMT or MPC. They always did the film franchise stuff. No worries, Luke. That's what we're here for. Do I know when the IBG 176 Henschel HS129 is being released? I do not. I've not seen anything on that, Bobby. Not recently, anyway. That was the scariest movie I've ever seen. It's one of those movies. I didn't rate it when I first saw it. I don't know whether it was the environment I was in at the time or whatever. I don't think I think I might have caught it halfway through or something. And it was just like, no. It's one of those films, though, if you go back and rewatch it, it gets better on a rewatch. And it's Sam Neill, that's the actor. I mean, Sam Neill's performance is really good. And there's just stuff in the background as well that if you rewatch it, it is a pretty fucking scary movie. Oh, excuse me. I hope I'm not going down with a cold. Anyway, so I've been talking for 47 minutes. We're halfway through. I haven't even looked at the diorama. I'm supposed to be building a diorama, guys. Stop distracting me. That is, of course, not real. Oh, the robots from Black Hole and the androids. Yeah, absolutely. That would be. Oh, Bohemso. Yeah, but a lot of these, a lot of the like kits of like the Liberator and like these various different film franchise are often mixed media kits from small companies. I like to do injection molded ones, like the NPC Eagle and Hawk, that are easily accessible. Lots of people, I mean, they are very expensive for what you get. But a lot of people, just aren't prepared to go to mixed media unless you're a true fan, and I think that's a bit of a shame. But anyway, I'm going to have a drink and then we will switch across to the other camera. It's a bit better. I should be able to speak now. Welcome, John. We are aligned in our culinary habits today. Although I'm not in a very hot Spain. I mean, Maria's in a hot Spain, so I guess I kind of cover it all as a partnership with her. Right, let me switch across to the idea cam. Hey, the system works. Let's get rid of any visual effects just in case. Okay, so we're probably not going to get very much done given that I've spent half the time just chatting. So last time, obviously, I laser cut these two pieces. Previously, those are glued on. You can see as I'm holding it by this, they are pretty well stuck down. So, because I was debating whether I take this off and do the sort of shed bits on and then put it back on, but no, we're going to get we're going to do it on here. And what I'm going to do is, what I thought I would do is basically do this in like a cleated wooden boards. So I'm just going to use plain old plastic. I mean, this is so old. This must be like 25 years old, this plastic. So I'm going to cut strips of this, and basically I'm going to board this as though it were, just like the real one would be. So I'll go from the bottom. There's a little critter on there. So I'll go from the bottom and then overlap like pieces of this to create a wood effect, a wood plank effect, all the way up. So what I need to do first is just measure across here. That is a shade under 4 centimeters. And then let's see, for a shed board is going to be about 4 inches, something like that. It's about 100 millimeters. That's going to make it about 4 millimeters in scale. So that all works out quite nicely. So what I'm going to do is get my glasses so I can see what I'm doing. And I'm just going to mark this in 4 millimeter bits. So I'll do that to start with. One, two, three, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So it doesn't really matter that we have broken edges here, because we can use that to our advantage. Because wood, of course, this is going to be a fairly, not necessarily dilapidated, but kind of abandoned structure. So a bit of wear and tear on it is going to be fine. So I'm just scoring this sheet. The idea is not to cut it all the way through. You see, I'm just scoring that. And then before I cut it off, what I'm going to do is, because at 1/24 scale, we want to put some sort of grain pattern on this. So this, which came from scale aircraft modeling, this is probably almost 30 years old. It's quite handy. It's got all these little 1/72 scale in foot stroke 3-inch divisions, 1/48 scale in the same. It's got these little templates. It's steel as well, for scribing, and little rivet holes. This was a giveaway with the magazine, I believe. But anyway, it's got a little razor saw on it. Let's see if you can see that. See at the end there? So I'm just going to use this. Right, take that out of the way for a second. And I'm just going to grate this along the length of this, just randomly. Just to get some texture. And you can see there's a bit of texture there. You can also use like a rough sanding board, like an 80 grit or 100 grit, something like that. And then where I've scored it, I'm just going to break it. Now I have these. Focus. Come on. Well, that didn't work. But the other things I did, I think I showed you this little microscope before. I adapted it because it was on a stupid ball and socket thing with a sucky cup kind of thing, which was rubbish. So I've now got a ball and socket joint on a proper thing here. So if I switch this on, hello. What I can do is I can actually show you on a microscope. Here we go. So you see it's got these scratches. So it's just, here's the smooth side. So that's the opposite side, just blank. So there you can see. So it's not bad, you know, for a homemade board. Of course, you can use like a purchased board if you want, or a pre-textured one. But if you don't have any, doing this kind of thing just gets you a bit of texture. You can carry on, getting more texture, changing that as you wish. But pretty easy thing to do. Oh, little spider. Sorry, little spider. There you go. So yeah, we've now created some boards, or long length of board. So just to show you what I'm going to do now is just under 4 centimeters, I believe. So we'll cut it at 4. Again, when cutting plastic art, the best thing to do is just to score it and then snap it. Come on, focus. Thank you. So all we're going to do here, perhaps I'll do it on the bit that's actually cut properly, is I'm going to glue this onto that and then do the next one, and so on and so on and so on. So I will probably use super glue for speed, given that we are streaming. Not my first choice for gluing plastic, but as I say, for speed here, it'll serve its purpose. Yeah, it really doesn't. It's not the best super glue for gluing plastic. It's kind of its least favorite medium. So for this edge, I'm going to just cut 4cm pieces. I'm not going to try and do any different lengths because this is the short end, and it'd be a pretty poor construction if you were ending boards that close to the end, really. The shorter pieces, though, won't go to waste, because what we'll do is we'll use these like elsewhere in this construction. For example, yeah, although be more likely along that end. So as always, guys, if you've got any comments or questions, just put them in capitals, as in question in capitals, comment in capitals, or you can of course use CCC or QQQ in capitals. Just helps me pick it out in the chat. Now, I am edging on the slightly longer side if I do have a difference, just so that it's easier to trim than it is to add things on, as it were. Okay, well it seems to have worked. So now what I'm going to do, see, is just overlap that a tiny bit, just to create that overlap wooden effect. Yeah. Oh, MPC made a Maximilian model in 1982. Vincent, that's never been done. That's really surprising. And what was the ship called? Was it it's like the Palomino or something? Can't remember. Not the big one, the little one. Question: what scale model shows do you usually go to? So the next one that I will be going to will be the Yeovil model show. And that is, I believe, I think it's October the 24th, I want to say. But if you look at Yeovil model show, Palomino, that's the one. Thank you, John. Yeah, if you look up Yeovil model show, you'll see when it is. So I usually go to that. I will be going to the October one. It's literally 20 minutes for me. I haven't been to many shows at all this year because obviously moving a Palomino and the Cygnus. Yeah, the Cygnus was the big one, and the Palomino was the little research vessel that found her. I actually had black hole wallpaper in my bedroom. And obviously, knowing now about hanging wallpaper, what a nightmare that must have been. I mean, the pattern on it was, this huge sprawling mural of the Cygnus and the Palomino and the robots, the black hole, and I mean, it's just what a nightmare to align all the stuff. The wastage on the rolls must have been huge. Props to my parents for that. You can see what I'm doing here. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. It's a bit difficult with the focus and trying to see. Oh God, how am I going to show you this? Let's try using the little microscope. What I need to do is connect this to the computer so that I can use it as another camera so you can see. But it will do. I can get it so that you can see the screen. I can get this to focus. I'm not sure what I'm focused on at the moment. That's the only thing. There we go. So you can see these are the boards. See how they're just overlapping. And then that's the ground. I really need something between these two. Yeah, you can kind of see from that angle. Yeah, see that's the overlapping board structure. So it's very simple. This is a pretty easy thing to do. It's not particularly high skill. Lucky for me, I guess. So the good thing about representing fairly rough cut boards like this is you don't have to be super careful. So now this one obviously has not split across that small piece, but it doesn't really matter, right? It doesn't really matter that the board's going to be a little bit uneven because it probably would have been. Well, I'm saying obviously in my diorama they were. This was not constructed with high quality timber. Or the highest quality timber, let's see. There's going to be a fair bit of variation. Okay, so I've actually got this one which has this break in it as well, which again I'm absolutely fine with. Although what I will do is I'm going to put it towards this end, and then I'll probably use that split. Come on, focus. And have like some ivy or something coming out of it, just to give it a little bit of visual interest and to use that hole. Now, the drawback of this is it's a bit laborious. Bit of beer power. Luke says, comment, speaking of model shows, I found the Tank Museum model show this month was a bit quieter than usual, unfortunately, but was still really good. Yeah, unfortunately, the so I can't do model shows that are on a Saturday. So obviously, my shop is open, which is a little bit limiting. If it was this weekend, that'd be fine. But unfortunately, they don't hold them for my convenience, which is, just not on, really, is it? So you can, again, it doesn't help that this is white, but you can see here there's a nice big difference in the width of the board here and here. So we're building up some character in this as we're going. And obviously, if you were to do the same sort of thing and you wanted to be more even, you can also do that. There's nothing stopping you. One of the great things about modeling, about doing this sort of scratch building, is that it's very much in your control. It's not like this is, and I think this is actually, this is the difference between making a diorama to making a kit, right? Is that there's no instructions here. There's no right and wrong. There's nobody telling me which order to put things in. This is, I'm making it up as I go along. So that is a little bit different from, making a standard model kit where you know exactly all the steps. Come on, stick down. And of course, if you decide at any point to change it, or you don't like something that you've done, you can change it. There is nothing to stop you. That's got us just over halfway, those 4 boards, strips, whatever you want to call them. So we're going to need quite a lot. I mean, that was kind of obvious if we looked at the size of our shed compared to the size of the sheet. Okay. So, I mean, I could have gone ahead and scratched up the whole of this sheet if I'd wanted to, because obviously we are going to probably need it all. Now, I just made a mistake there where I didn't press against here enough, and I went in this sort of curve. But again, let's just see if you can see that. If I hold it against the light, you see how that's not a straight line. Now, if we were making very, very accurate ones, that would be a bit of a nightmare, right? But for this, for doing wooden boards, that's great, because you often get boards that have, split along the grain of the wood rather than, the sawmill as intended, which is a disaster for, any DIY people. But for us, on a modeling perspective, when we're trying to get some irregularity, or we don't mind if we have some irregularity, I should say, that's absolutely fine and dandy. So what I'm hoping to do with this diorama series is show you that dioramas aren't hard. Using pretty basic model skills. It's a matter of perseverance, a matter of using your imagination, observation, doing the right sort of research, and just having fun. Oh, you see where this is brittle and it's cracked. Again, that's ideal for us. If you're trying to recreate a natural material, that has then been, sawn, worked, whatever, natural kind of deviations, randomness, breaks, all that sort of thing, gives you an opportunity to, well, for one, tell a story, and secondly, to just enhance the realism of what you're doing, rather than having everything look like this strange sanitized version of reality. And I think if you're starting dioramas, that's probably the one area that I think most people, if you're going to get something wrong, you're going to stumble along the way, it is on making things look too nice. Because the world isn't generally, even nice things are pretty messed up, actually. Simon Monash should said, question, do you find that model shows in the south are hard to get to? Here up north, they are sometimes an hour or more to travel to. I mean, I guess it depends on what your possibilities are, right? I think an hour between model shows is about right, to be honest, in terms of geographical distribution, because otherwise they tend to they tend to tread on each other's toes a little bit, and so you get that thing. Well, you're not drawing as many people because there's a model show last month in the same sort of area, so people don't have unlimited incomes. They also want to spend time with their families, so they're not going to go to every single model show in a relatively small area. And of course, for the organizers, they need people to come through the door, they need ticket sales, they need the traders to support them. Traders are only going to support them if they get a decent footfall and make money. So now, obviously, if you are limited, don't have your own car, limited to public transport, if you have any sort of issues with mobility, any of those kinds of things, that's all going to restrict what you can and can't do, sadly. Random bits of masking tape just sticking to things. That's because when I was making the Artemis, I did need to tape it together. Funnily enough, I didn't need to tape anything on the Apollo Saturn V. I always call it the Apollo, but of course it's the Apollo mission, and the rocket itself was the Saturn V. So I'm in sawmill mode at the moment, just making lots of planks. Though I don't think. How many did I use? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. Okay, so I think this strip. No, actually, let's save that one because it's got some more interesting bits on it. Let's make these, and then we'll stick them on. We should be pretty much done at that point on that end, and then we can look at the longer length and what we might do with a door. Right. Now look at that. Nobody's made a Palomino either. And proceeded a Cygnus in the weird 1 to 4,255th scale in 1979. I think MPC, I don't know whether they had like a license with certain studios, or they did individual ones. Maybe it was easier to get them back then, because they did a lot of the film stuff. MPC did the Eagle and the Hawk, Space 1999, of course. It was them and AMT. AMT seemed to do the Star Wars stuff. One thing I'm struggling with a little bit in terms of the videos for the laser cutter is, what do I say about a laser cutter? Because it cuts things. It's a bit like reviewing a saw, Yeah, it cuts really well. And then most of the use of it is software, which isn't part of the machine itself. So let me know if what you guys would find useful about a laser cutter review, and I'll try to incorporate that into the video, because I'm a little bit like, well, I don't know how I'm going to get 2 videos out of this. It cuts stuff in straight lines really well. I mean, if I wanted to cut straight boards, like absolutely perfect ones, I think I just use the laser cutter now. It is using a sledgehammer to crack a walnut, but once you've got it, it's such an easy thing to do, and it is perfect, it's flawless. Whereas, as you can tell with the way I've cut these, humans aren't. Now that's advantageous when you're doing an old, wooden workshop. But if I were making something that had been, much more meticulously machined, or in a smaller scale, where variations would equate to a much bigger deviance. Obviously, in 48 scale, these deviances would be twice as big. And when you go down to 72nd scale, you're getting that much more. So, a 1 millimeter deviance, or sorry, a 0.1 millimeter deviance suddenly becomes significant. So you can see I'm just about finished here. Oh, no, don't want to use that one. Almost made a fatal mistake. I'm almost gluing my finger to the edge there. You see that? So this one is the one that has that nice natural curve. So I want to make sure that that is this way around. I don't want that to be covered up. Oh, damn it. Gluing it on the wrong way around. Not very good. It helps that my super glue has dried out quite a lot. It's quite thick now. It's kind of more gel-like consistency, which is helping me out here. And last one. There we go. So there's my rough boarding. Now, obviously, this edge I'm going to trim. This edge I've got to do less trimming. Now, 6 feet. So that's what, 180 centimeters divided by 24. That's a 7.5 centimeter board, would be a 6 foot long board. How long would 8 feet be? Oh, it's going to be 16 feet in 1/48, right? There we go. I think that's reasonable, right? An 8 foot board. So, and again, I kind of did this without really saying anything then, but now obviously this is 1/24 scale, so you've got to think about how big things are going to be on your diorama. So, for instance, I'm trying to make this, a reasonable timber size. So this is a 8 foot long, 4 inch wide plank, not plank, but board, to make it in scale. Because if I did a really long one, it would look weird, right? That also means that some of these 400s here can nicely come along and be the, the ones in between, so I can build up a staggered effect across here. Now, we did also talk about having a door. And I think I'm going to put a door here. I just think that would add a bit of character. So again, 6 foot door, going to be 12 feet in, and then it would be 3 feet wide, 6 feet wide in 48 scale. Okay. So where's my plastic card gone? Here it is. So for the door frame itself, so I'm just going down the chat because I've neglected it a little bit. Let me just take a quick pause. Question: could you use one sheet of plastic and score it at regular intervals to look like separate boards? Yes, you could. Absolutely, Julian. If it's flush boarded. Now, obviously, I'm not doing flush boarding. So if you look at my boards, I can get it to the camera. You can see I've got overlap boards, so you couldn't get that effect. There you go. You can see the boarding there. Yeah. So if you were doing flush boarding, yes, you can score that. A regular, just use one board, score it at regular intervals for where you want it. In fact, I think you can buy like wood effect plasticard, which already has that. I'm not sure about 1/24 scale because generally it's done for rail scales. So I don't think you would have anything in that sort of scale there. Okay. Now the width of this is about right. So I'm going to do it widthways now, I think. Cheers, Edwell. Good to see you. Yeah, because plastic and wood, exactly. How the hell do you not get stuck to what you're gluing using super glue? Practice, I think. Question: is it worth using a 1/24 scale figure, or if you have one to gauge the size of the door? Yep, that's entirely possible as well. I'm just doing it 6 feet because it's a shed, so it doesn't need to be. Also, this is measured to the height of my garage, so I know that the door in it pretty much goes up to, it's about 6.5 feet, about up to the roof, not quite. So easy to sort that. So again, I'm still going to go with 4-inch, 100 mil, I think. The frame, yeah, I think that's reasonable. Let's go 6-inch because that's nice and easy on this. Oh, well, I told you this was brittle. Quite old, this plasticard, and time has not treated it well, much like the rest of us, I presume. Now, do I want to make the frame wood? I probably do, don't I? Probably do want to make the frame wood. But one of the things that I am going to do is I'm going to make this double width, double thickness. I would use a different gauge of plasticard, but I don't want to have to go and find some more plasticard in the middle of a stream. So just going to go with this. Cheers, Julian. Good to see you. Take care. So how tall is this? Yeah, we've done this scale 7 feet. If I do a 6.5, I think, actually. Yeah, so 13 feet in 1/48 scale. Quite handy, this is in 1/48. And a couple of lengths of that. Those are my uprights for the door. And then, let's see, shed door. Standard door is about 90 centimeters. Call it 3 feet because that means I can still use this ruler. There's those. So 6 feet. So this is just going to be the sort of outline of where the door is. Yeah, come on. And then I will put board on top of this and then the door within it. So I think kind of towards the end there. I don't want it right on the end, so I can still have some boarding here, and then I can use up these little bits. But I think that's about right. Okay, more or less. So we'll start with this side. See, one of the reasons I'm not gluing my fingers together is because this, as I said, is a little bit dry, so it's gel rather than liquid. If it was liquid, this might be going a very different way. So the main thing here is that I'm trying to make it parallel with this edge. As it's a laser cut edge, I know that it is flat. Okay. We can put the cross piece. Now, when I put the, now there we go, I did get glue on myself there. When I put the bits on top of this, they're not going to be textured either. And that's because I want this to be a painted frame rather than, you know, rough kind of exterior wood used for the main sort of body of the shed. Because obviously, if you've done a decent job with painting, you shouldn't get loads of grain showing through. Oh, yeah. This is a new, well, it's not that new, but it's a YouTube feature that they've introduced called Hype, where you can hype your favorite channels to get them pushed up rankings or something. It's just a stupid way for YouTube to try and make more money. like they need more. I would pay no attention to it. Okay. Now that one was a little bit proud because I didn't do it all the way down because the groundwork actually made that difficult to glue all the way down. In fact, it's making it difficult here as well. I might just trim that at the bottom. Yeah, because I want this to glue flat. The one over it, and obviously it's going to be glued plastic to plastic. That can go on there. That's absolutely fine. Because I want this one to go over that. Good evening, off-duty engineer. Yeah, I think it's purely an excuse for, I mean, does it help? I don't know, because it's one of those things that's, who knows what works and what doesn't with YouTube. So what I'm doing here is just putting an angle, because obviously a frame would be made in that way. So I'm just going to use my single-bladed nippers to actually nicely cut that. Gives that 45-degree angle there. And I'll use the nippers again here. I'll just use the scalpel just to score where that's going to be across. I can use the nippers again, single-bladed. This wouldn't work with double-bladed. And this we can glue on with good old standard extra thin. There we go. Yeah, when I'm doing the boards out from here, I can obviously do them both ways and then fill in the pieces. It was this one, wasn't it? The long one. I'm trying to make sure that I get it lined up with the prior one we've had. Like so. So yeah, I'm probably going to put this one in, and then I'm going to leave this as this tethered piece, and then use this one, which is the other piece of it. Just cut that in, just so it looks like the border's broken, which it has. So, you know, there's some useful, again, just little bits of like that, just little things that tell a story, that tell texture, that make it seem a little bit more real. Meanwhile, I need a couple more pieces of uprights. Quickly get those going. Then what I will do between now and the next diorama session in a month is I'll finish up all the cladding, because you've seen how you've seen the methodology behind it. And then you won't be sitting watching me doing the same thing next time. Let's just trim that to a 45-degree. Hopefully that will, yeah, that's not bad. There. One more of those. This piece isn't going to be big enough, is it? No, damn it. Of course it's not going to be. That would be far too easy. I think my sort of advice, conclusion, whatever you want to call it, to this is plasticard is your friend. You can do 100,000 things with plasticard. It's obviously how people used to actually make entire models back in the 60s and stuff. And for diorama purposes, it's pretty much invaluable. So if you don't have any plasticard, I would recommend you invest in some. It's not that expensive. It's not the sort of thing that you're going to find, oh god, I got loads of this, what do I do with it? You'll always find a use for it. As I say, even after 25 years, I'm using this piece. So it's not something that, even though it does, like all plastic, it will deteriorate, not to a point where it's unusable. This is eminently usable. So I hope I'm demonstrating. I do sell it in the shop, but I don't have it on the website yet. Again, just priorities. So let's get this other door frame on. There we go. So we have the door frame. So it's too thick to TWO rather than 2TOO. That allows us to get these boards and to have some differentiation. In fact, I might use that. Oh no, I can't use that. That's not stressed. so we can see a difference between the frame and the boarding, basically. That's what I'm trying to do there. I'm just trying to measure this. No, you can't see, but I need 3 hands, so you just have to trust me. So I just basically scored this against the edge there. There we go. So I'm going to demonstrate that now. That piece gets out of the way. I do probably just need to trim a little piece of that groundwork. Now, this also demonstrates advantages of making your own groundwork. So I've trimmed that away. You see, it was quite flexible. We didn't just lose massive chunks. I had to like cut it off. And it's that color all the way through, because obviously we mixed in the good stuff, coffee grounds, the paints. So you should be able to see when I get this piece in position, right way up. So we've got a little crack there, and you can see the board is further in, recessed compared to this door frame, which will just help to make it look a little bit more authentic. Let's go ahead and glue these in. Get this last one on. And that'll do us for this evening, I think. So there we go. Kind of, because I positioned this one more or less flush on the edge here. So I've gone nicely up to that, just leaving a little bit. We've got this glued along here with the break here, just again to give it a little bit of character. And then the next boards I'll overlap and then build this up across, and then just use all these little bits that I've got as offcuts here across this side, again just to save waste and just give that little bit of continuity on, rather than sort of leaving it on a door, which would look a bit odd. So just super glue that in place. I'll just come back and actually, using single bladed nippers, I should be able to just trim that back if I could actually use them properly as they were intended, rather than that. There we go. And that's carrying on the line of the bottom there, and then we can build up across there. Oh no, it doesn't reverse it for you guys. So I'll build up all of that. Then we can make the door. We'll just do that with a single sheet. So again, it'll be recessed into this doorway. So again, it'll look like it belongs there rather than, you know, just being sort of tacked on. But we can do that next time. So as I say, I'll finish off the cladding, do all that boring bit over the next month, and then we'll come back and go on to the next stage, which I say will be the door, and then starting to build up some of the groundwork and interest on here before we then move on. Where is that Land Rover? It's around here somewhere. Yeah, don't know. If I find it, I'll grab it and put it on for you. But I don't think I can. Okay, let's swap you across. There we go. You're back. And don't forget the hinges. Indeed, indeed. We'll address all of that. So it's often the little details which really make a diorama pop. So, for instance, at this scale, nails are visible, right? So we need to think about how we're going to address that. Now, most of that can be done through paint, unless there's, you know, a rusty nail poking out or something. We don't really need to go much, you know, physically into the nails so much, unless it was made with massive cleat nails. But you know, let's assume it wasn't that badly made. It is still standing after all. But you're absolutely right, Simon. You know, it's the little things. It's, you know, making sure you've got hinges, making sure you've got a doorknob, making sure that you know, everything is. We'll talk about all of that when we come to it. But you're quite correct. The small things are the things that will draw your eye. And remember, a diorama is really about not drawing the eye. It's a background. It's an environment for your subject, so that you're focusing on your subject. And the more you look at your subject, you might notice little things, you know, out of the corner of your eye and stuff, and explore that. But it's not the main focus. But that's what makes a cool diorama, right? That you're drawn to the focus is good, and then the more time you spend looking at that, you might notice, oh, look, there's a little mouse, you know, underneath one of the wheels or something. You know, that's kind of what you're aiming for. Not you look at it and you think, oh God, there's something weird about this, you know. And it almost repels you, or you're looking at it thinking, yeah, but there's no hinges, you know, whatever it is. But anyway, guys, thank you for spending, as it was almost only an hour and a bit, doing the actual diorama, but a lot of chat, which is always nice. Even if it's you know, me mainly monologuing with you guys putting in the chat, but I you know, that's chat, right? But I really appreciate you coming in tonight. I hope you learned something, or it was useful at least. You know, even if it was just in terms of, you know, making sure that things are measured in scale, just simple things like, you know, using a razor saw or file as well, or, you know, some sort of abrasive on plasticard, just get that grain effect for wood, you know, allowing natural breaks, all of that sort of stuff. But anyway, thank you guys for joining me on this week's Midweek Model Meet. Hope you have a fabulous rest of your week. And I look forward to joining you. Well, hopefully you'll join John Alex Scale Model Inc. Live on Friday night. I'll pop in there. So hopefully I'll see you there. Okay. Thanks, guys. Cheers now.